You wake up tomorrow morning and the first thing you do before you even get out of bed is reach for your phone. You check the time. You scroll through your notifications. You open the weather app to see if you need a jacket. You check your messages, maybe respond to a few. You see a headline that catches your eye and spend 5 minutes reading about something that happened overnight. You put on a playlist while you make coffee. You check your emails. You look up whether that restaurant you want to try tonight is still open. You order something you forgot to buy yesterday. All of this so normal that you don't even register you're doing it, and then it's gone. Every server on Earth, every undersea cable, every connection, offline simultaneously. And this time, they're not coming back. The internet is shut down forever. Most people hear that and picture a really bad inconvenience. No social media, no streaming, having to use paper maps and actually talk to people at the bank. Frustrating, sure, but manageable. People lived without it for thousands of years, right? You'd adapt. I want to show you why that is almost completely wrong, because the internet stopped being just a convenience a long time ago. It's the skeleton holding the modern world upright, and if you pull it out, the body collapses. And some of what collapses in the first 24 hours alone will definitely surprise you. Also, we will go over my humanity survivability score at the end to see if humanity would survive this scenario. The first 24 hours. Let me start with the thing nobody talks about when they imagine this scenario. The financial system dies almost immediately, basically within hours. Every bank transaction on Earth, every stock trade, every terminal in every shop runs on internet infrastructure. The moment the internet goes, none of those things work. You can't pay for your coffee with your card, you can't transfer money to your landlord, you can't access your savings. The money in your bank account still technically exists. It's just completely unreachable, like having a full wallet locked inside a safe that nobody has the combination to anymore. By lunchtime on day one, most shops have stopped accepting payment. By the evening, fuel stations are closed because they can't process transactions. By nightfall, the people who had cash in their pockets that morning are suddenly in a dramatically better position than everyone else. And most people in developed countries are carrying almost none. The average person in the UK carries less than £5 in cash. The average American carries around $22. That's your runway in a world where the internet just died. The internet didn't just change how we communicate, it became the circulatory system of the global economy. Every supply chain on Earth is coordinated in real time over internet infrastructure. When that goes, the just-in-time delivery model that keeps supermarket shelves stocked collapses within days. Most supermarkets hold about 3 days of stock without resupply. The economy restructures itself. Okay, so let's say we get through the first week somehow. Governments step in, emergency cash gets distributed. The immediate chaos settles into something more like grim routine. What does the world look like after that? The industries that disappear aren't the ones you'd expect to feel worst about losing. Yes, social media is gone. Yes, streaming is gone. Yes, a huge amount of entertainment and distraction just evaporates overnight. But the things that quietly go with it are the ones that actually held civilization together in ways most people never noticed. Cloud computing is an obvious one. Something like 90% of the world's data lives in cloud infrastructure. Every medical record, every government database, every scientific research archive, every financial transaction history, all of it stored on servers that need internet connectivity to be accessible. Without the internet, hospitals are working from whatever paper records they kept, which in most modern hospitals is basically nothing because they digitized everything years ago. A doctor trying to look up a patient's medication history or previous diagnoses is now working from memory and whatever the patient can tell them. GPS is another one people forget about. The satellites themselves still orbit, but the systems that process and deliver GPS data to your devices rely on internet-connected infrastructure, shipping, military navigation, the logistics networks that move food and medicine around the planet. All of that degrades significantly. Planes don't fall out of the sky immediately. Pilots are trained for instrument navigation, but the global air traffic coordination system that keeps hundreds of thousands of flights from running into each other becomes enormously more complicated overnight. And then there's the jobs question, which is where I think the real long-term restructuring happens. Somewhere between 40 and 50% of all jobs in developed economies are either directly internet dependent or rely heavily on internet infrastructure to function. Software developers, digital marketers, e-commerce businesses, a huge chunk of healthcare administration, all of it either disappears or has to fundamentally reinvent itself. What actually survives? Here's the reframe I want to offer. because I don't think this scenario is purely a disaster story. Some things would not only survive the loss of the internet, they'd probably get better. And thinking about which ones is very interesting. Local, everything makes a comeback. Local shops, local supply chains, local knowledge, local community. The farmer's market that your city still has, but nobody goes to because it's easier to order, becomes an important institution again. The pub, the town square, the physical community notice board, all of the things that the internet made seem quaint and unnecessary reassert themselves as the primary infrastructure of daily life. Face-to-face communication gets its status back. And look, I'm not being naive about this. I'm not saying everything gets better because we talk to each other more. We built a communication system of extraordinary reach and speed, and one of its primary uses turned out to be making people feel more isolated, more anxious, and more convinced that everyone else had a better life than them. I'm not sure the pre-internet version of human social life was worse in every way. Physical books, physical maps, physical libraries suddenly become infrastructure rather than nostalgia. Any knowledge that only existed digitally is just gone, which is actually a terrifying thought because an enormous amount of human knowledge exists only digitally now. But the knowledge that was printed is suddenly the most valuable thing in the room. And that knowledge is actually pretty robust. You can build a lot from what's in a decent library. Humans built civilization before the internet after all, slowly, with a lot of suffering, but we did it. We put everything in one basket. At some point in the last 30 years, humanity made a collective decision to move almost all of the critical infrastructure of modern life onto a single network. The economy, the food supply chain, healthcare records, communications, navigation, financial systems, essentially the entire operating system of civilization now runs on internet infrastructure. And we did this without really deciding to. Nobody voted on it. Nobody drew up a risk assessment and said, are we sure we want the global food supply to depend on this? We just individually made convenient choices and collectively ended up in a world where turning off one thing turns off almost everything. I find that alarming, and not in a dramatic, end-of-the-world way. More in a quiet, this seems like an oversight kind of way. The internet has no backup. There's no analog fallback for most of what it does. We replaced the redundant, decentralized, slow systems of the pre-internet world with a single faster system, and we got so much in return that we stopped noticing what we'd given up. The internet going down forever would be catastrophic. A lot of people would die in the first year, from supply chain collapse, from healthcare system failure, from the knock-on effects of economic collapse. It would not be a clean return to a simpler life. It would be brutal and disorienting and incredibly difficult. The version of this story that I find most interesting isn't the collapse. It's what gets rebuilt, because humans are extraordinary at adaptation. Every civilization that has ever existed has been built by people responding to the conditions they found themselves in. The post-internet world would be built the same way, slowly, locally, and probably with a much stronger awareness of what happens when you put all your eggs in one basket. So what if the internet shut down forever? Honestly, I think the first year would be one of the hardest periods in modern human history. The dependency we've built is deep and largely invisible until it's gone, and the gap between the world we have and any world without it is not a gentle step down, it's a cliff. But I also think that what gets rebuilt on the other side would be more interesting than we give ourselves credit for. More dependent on actual human knowledge and actual human community. Slower? Yes. Noisier probably, but maybe more honest about what actually matters and what was just filling time. I will give this scenario a 5 out of 10 on the humanity survivability score. We'd make it, but we'd hate the first year. The internet gave us everything, and we handed it the keys to everything in return. Whether that was a good trade is probably the most important question we're not asking. The species survives. The civilization technically survives, but not without a very ugly transition period that most people alive today are completely unprepared for. The good news is humans are stubborn and creative. The bad news is we'd have to relearn a lot of things we were very confident we'd never need again, like how to read a paper map without crying. If this one made you want to go charge a backup battery and stockpile some cash, honestly, fair enough. Subscribe if you want me to keep showing you the things that are quietly holding your life together, and comment what scenario you want to see next.